So thank you all for coming to the William Paterson University alumni program featuring Jefferson Harman. I wanted to talk a little bit about Jefferson before he begins. Jefferson Harman is a dream interpreter and a TV radio personality. As seen on TV and radio, Jefferson Harman captivates his audience by interpreting their dreams live on the air. He stars in Dreaming With ... on stardreamscafe.com with co-host Adam Rothenberg, Call Me Adam, filmed at the famed Algonquin Hotel in New York City's historic theater district. He is a recurring guest on 1520 AM WCHE Radio's Life Unedited with host John Aberle, where he interprets the dreams of people who call into the show. In today's performance, Jefferson will cover a variety of topics on you and your dreams. Do you have a dream you would like interpreted, can't recall your dreams, and want to learn how? Would you like to connect with someone who has passed on through your dreams? What's the best way to keep a dream journal? Are you experiencing phobias or dealing with issues in your waking life that you can't seem to work out? Are you interested in lucid dreaming? These questions and more will be covered today as Jefferson begins his seminar. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Hi, everybody. Hi. Thank you. It's a pleasure to see everybody here today. So basically, before we begin, I know that I know most of you, but for those who don't know my work, I am a dream interpreter. I started when I was very young. When I was 3, I had a nightmare, and that nightmare basically was so profound that it stayed with me, and it made me hyper aware of my dream state. And so I began to question, like, what is this? And even at that young age, when I couldn't articulate it, I knew something was up. It wasn't anything I'd ever seen before. It didn't make sense to me. So I took the experience to mean that something more was going on here than what I understood. My mother said, well, you know, it's a nightmare, it's okay, it's a dream, it'll be all right, don't worry about it, you'll forget it in a couple days. And I realized that that wasn't good enough. There was more going on there. The images were too scary, they didn't stop. Why was I seeing this? And so, and another thing that was crazy was, in the dream was a house. I saw the house first before I was inside the house. And the following day, we were driving, and we drove past the actual house. Yeah, so that makes it stay with you even at 3. And so I kept paying attention to my dreams, and over time, I realized that there was a correlation between my dreams and what was going on in my life. And I was too young to really articulate this, but I had a sense of it. And I would hear these very adult sentences in my head kind of explaining what was going on. And then I would be like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Then I'd try to repeat it, but of course I was too young. I didn't have the vocabulary. And so what would come out of my mouth was just gibberish, and people would look at me like I was crazy. So I just shut up about it for a really long time. And the result was that I did a course of my own study without realizing it. I never took a psychology course. Still haven't to this day. I've read up on it on my own, but I never read Freud or Jung. I didn't study the dream interpreter experts. You know, I didn't read their books, specifically because I'm writing my own. It has nothing to do with what they taught. It's just that I don't want that influencing my book before it's done. And once it's done, then definitely I will read up on them. There'll probably be correlations between what I write and what they wrote, because everything is energy and everything is together. So it would make sense that some of the things that I teach are present in already existing dream therapies. But over time, as I watched this, I realized there's a conversation going on. If there's a movie, then there has to be, you know, a screenwriter, a director, there are actors on the screen, there's the person in the audience watching it, there's the projectionist. Who am I in all of that? And I realized at some point that I'm all of them. I'm some combination of them. And in that realization allowed me to broaden the conversation, because once you realize there's a conversation going on, then you're honoring the other person on the other side of the conversation. So whether you call it God or energy or your higher self, that's what this is. It's an exchange between you and your higher energy. So to quote Abraham Hicks, it's about moving up the vibrational scale. And as you do that, you create better health for yourself, you create joy in your life, and you create the ability to heal from different things, not only in your life, but in the lives of the people around you. It's easy to forgive people. It's a very useful thing for everyone to be able to interpret their dreams, because then you have a template by which day to day you can refer to what's happening in my body, what's happening in my life, in my world, what are these complications, why am I stuck in this place, why is it that I can't solve this problem. Those resolutions come up in answers in metaphors and symbols in your dreams, and it's a conversation. So as you engage it, think about it. If I'm looking at you face to face and we're having a conversation, then you're paying attention to me and vice versa. But if while you're saying something to me, I kind of look over this way and, oh, gee, that's pretty, eventually you're going to lose interest. And so that's us talking to the universe. The universe is saying, okay, here's the answer you've been asking me for all week long. And we're going, pretty. And so we miss it, with, ooh, shiny. We're so collectively ADD as a culture that there are so many things, cell phone screens, computer screens, all these things to distract us from what our own intuition is trying to guide us to. And that's where we slip off, because once we're looking somewhere else, we're not in the present moment. The universe is saying, here it is, and then we're looking somewhere else. And so the universe is wanting that one-on-one conversation. What ends up happening is as we focus on the next thing, it's as if, okay, now I'm not looking at you, I'm looking at you. And what happens then? Well, now that my attention's not here, the universe is in the periphery. What I do when I interpret dreams is I'm reading what's in your periphery. I see where the universe is going over here, and you're not able to see it because your attention is elsewhere. It's on the cell phone screen, it's on the bill you have to pay, it's on the traffic you're stuck in. And so what happens is that distraction in your life becomes the very thing that's keeping you from finding the answer to the very question that you've been asking. And so I help us. And so I mean to teach people what I already know, which is that the more that you pay attention to this conversation, the more that you become involved in it, the more that it works for you, and the more that you're able to connect with not just yourself, but the people around you, the situations around you, in a more meaningful and healthy way. And so that's why I do what I do. So let's start, since we have a few people, let's ask some questions. Like, does anyone have a specific question about dreaming? Do you not remember your dreams? Do you want to know about lucid dreaming? Is there anything in particular that you're curious about? And we have a microphone for everybody.
I have a question.
Okay, and
So, yes. So, when I was younger, I actually had reoccurring dreams but they always changed slightly, but I was always leading a group of people out of danger, always. And then that sort of turned into literally a dream world that I created. So I would go to sleep and I would say, okay, so I was living in this like little 1-bedroom apartment, and I remember there was a closet and there was a door that led me out of the closet into some scary world while I would lead the pack out of danger. So I was always really curious.
but
what
was the
that
world
meant.
really scary if you were leading them through that where there was no danger? Wasn't the door?
We never got to that point.
Okay.
So I was always like looking, and I always had like a weapon, or I was just like holding people back.
Right,
But
right.
there was never that beautiful blue sky. Here we are. We were all saved.
Okay, so when you went in to open that door, it wasn't like, Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, all of a sudden everything was living
it was
color.
actually dark, and
was
it was
dark.
almost like the monkeys and the Wicked Witch.
Oh,
and that.
okay.
Yeah,
So, it's
so
kind of
it was
like,
dark and scary.
It was kind of like the dark version of
Right.
of Narnia, right?
Exactly.
There's the door, you go to open it, and instead of the lovely snow on the lane, you're seeing what?
Dark. I remember sort of seeing silvery shadows, and it was just dark. You had to sometimes there was like an old school marm, like in Matilda, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Someone was always after us in some regard.
And now, do you have any idea of who the people were that you were saving?
No.
Okay.
I don't know that I knew them.
And you said this was a recurring dream?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was always leading some crew. It may have been a different crew, and it may have been a slightly different circumstance. It might not have been the school marm and Matilda. It might have been a bad man. I don't know, but it was always somebody
Okay,
like
but
that.
you had a sense that there was some entity that was,
Correct.
what, chasing you? Or just,
Yes, we had to escape from some danger.
And where were you before you saw the door? Were you in your house? Were you
So yes, I had
outside?
created this little apartment for myself.
In the dream?
Just a bed, yeah.
So it wasn't something where you lived in real life?
I mean, I guess it was a state of that, because
Yeah.
it was sort of maybe a dream state
Version?
of my room.
Okay. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. How old were you when you started having the dream?
Oh boy, I was probably young teen.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So,
But it went on for years, like 12 to 15 or 16.
so give me a point where you last had it. How old were you when you last had it?
I guess I was a teenager, kind of 16-ish, 17.
When you
maybe.
last had it?
Yes.
Okay, so when you first had it, how old were you?
Like 12.
Okay, so
Yeah.
12 to 16, so 4 years. Okay, so what was happening when you were 12? Did anything change in your life? Did you move? Did you change schools? Did you go to middle school instead of grammar?
Yeah, we went from where I grew up. There was a central 6th grade, and
Yeah.
then there was 7th grade, which was kind of, I guess, middle school, 7, 8, 9.
So were you 12 when you made that move?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then was that a good experience? Was the shift from one to the other a good experience?
As I recall, none of my school years were good experiences. So I would
you
say
see where
no.
I'm going here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So one of the things that's happened.
But they didn't get better at 16. That's why it was weird that it stopped.
But there's a reason for it. We'll get to it.
Okay.
So what reoccurring dreams tell us is that the universe has a message for us. It's like the universe tapping you on the shoulder because it sent you a singing telegram and you never sent a thank you card,
Right.
acknowledging, oh, I get it. Thank you so much. It's so what happens is the universe says, okay, you didn't get the message. I'm going to give you the dream again. And I'm going to give it to you again. Maybe I'm going to shift it up a little bit. Maybe we'll go to a different place when we get through the door this time. But you're going to have this sense that you're always protecting whoever these people are, and that you're the protector, and that when you get to the place where you're trying to get away from the person, the place that you're going is still not all that great. So all of that was an expression of the stress that you were experiencing at that time in your life. And the reason you kept having it was because it was looking for a resolution. Now, sometimes that resolution happens when we actually interpret the dream and understand it. Sometimes it happens when the circumstances in our lives change and the stress itself, it may not go away completely, but it changes. It morphs into something else. And so the dream no longer is appropriate. And that's why when you were 16, it stopped. So the question is, what happened when you were 16? What was different when you were 16 from your experience? Again, so you're 11 and you're in grammar school, then all of a sudden you're in middle school and you're in 7th grade and you're 12, and then that goes until now you're in high school. So what grade were you in at 16?
So, I guess, what grade are you in 16? I guess a junior. But you know what I was thinking? Just as you said that, it sort of clicked, and maybe this will resonate.
And this is what happens, is the conversation brings it out.
Is that maybe, I think that was the point when my brain was more mature and I could understand the stress I was dealing with and cope with it better.
Yes.
And even though it wasn't all great, at least I understood, okay, now I get people, I get my place in this world, and
Yes.
I get how to proceed without being all insecure and
And
freaked
without
out.
feeling like you always have to escape to somewhere from where
Right.
you are.
That's interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And so
Yeah.
once you got to the point where you felt more centered and more stable, the dream was no longer necessary, because what the dream was doing is it was giving you a metaphor for the stress that you were experiencing. And when you matured enough to realize that this was no longer necessary, it stopped.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the door was really you trying to find a way out of the complications you were experiencing and bring everyone else with you, that could be your classmates,
Right.
only to find out that you didn't like the next teacher that you had, or you didn't like the course of study, or you didn't like all the pressure of the homework, or whatever multitude of that. It could be all of that. And so as you went on and you were continuing to experience these things, what was there on the other side was still shadowy, and you were still looking at it and going, this isn't where I want to be heading either, but I'm being chased. Well, you're being chased by the stress itself. That's why the chase was, the chaser was never embodied.
Right.
Because it was a phantom. There was no actual person. It was just the feeling that, wait a minute, I have to get away from where I am to get to where I'll be comfortable. But wait, the place I'm going to isn't comfortable either. Now what do I do? But what you did do throughout that was you protected the other people. That was the thing. So you understood, number one, that your nature is motherly, that your first instinct is to protect the other people around you, and that you'll do whatever you can in order to make that happen. Even if the next place that you're going isn't as good as the one you're in, it's better than the one you're in, and so you help people move on. My guess is that actually applies to your work.
That's very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I just had okay.
Please say that into the microphone.
I just had a aha moment. Yes.
Wonderful. Anybody else have a question, share, or a dream that you want to ask about? Okay, let's pass the mic on down.
Can you hear me?
Barely.
Okay. Um, I had a dream. This might have been about a month or so ago, and during the time period, I was getting ready to lose my job. And I've had dreams before where I've been lost, and it's just like I'm just sort of going along and just observing, don't know where the heck I am, so on and so forth. But in this dream, it was kind of like, I don't know if you're familiar with the area, like where on Route 4 there used to be Alexander's.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
if you didn't know where to get off, you would loop around the highway again. Because I remember one time my father had done it 4 times.
Yes.
He said, if I don't find it, we're going home.
Yeah.
Okay?
And the only thing that made you feel good in all of that was that big abstract art thing on the
Absolutely.
wall. It's like you knew where you were, you knew what
Yes.
town you were in, you knew
Yes.
which direction you were coming from,
Yes.
all because of that abstract art.
Absolutely.
Saved a lot of people.
So similar in this dream that I had, it was like I couldn't find the exit and I couldn't get on the highway.
Okay.
And it seem like I tried to go this way and I ended up this other way. So this was sort of like the last go round, and I'm like, oh man, this is crazy. I can't believe. I said, well, let me go straight on this road. Maybe I could find a way to get back onto the highway. So I pull up on this road, and on the right-hand corner of this road was a bulldozer. Okay. And so I'm like, oh, they must be doing some kind of construction or something. But as I traveled, the road ended and it was too late for me to stop. So I started to fall. And I've never had a dream falling before.
Okay.
And I remember trying to stop myself and I started to scream. And then what happened after that, all of a sudden, the next thing, I was in this room. I was in this room with all of these books everywhere. And I remember asking this woman that was there, she was, I guess, like the librarian of all of these books. I'm like, where am I? Did I die? She said, no, God is not finished with you yet. And then right after that, what came into the room was this tall figure. I couldn't see who it was, but for some reason I knew it was my father. And a woman followed him. And I remember him distinctly saying, I didn't know if we should come here or if we should have gone to the hospital. And then I woke up.
To the hospital?
Yeah. That person didn't know, and again, I assumed it was as if it were my father. He didn't know where to go to find me. He knew I was in trouble, but he didn't know if he should go to the hospital,
Right.
or I don't know if I was in heaven, because I have heard that there are books of just books, I guess, where you are, and in the Bible they talk about the Lamb's Book of Life.
Yes.
So I don't know exactly where I was. I'm only assuming.
Great. Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful stuff. Well, there's a lot of things that are common threads throughout that, and one of them is being lost and trying to find your way on the exit ramp. Okay, and trying to find how to get onto the road you're supposed to be on. And as you say, you had this dream around the time that you lost a job. So you're wondering where to from here, but you can't quite find it because you don't have the new job yet. And so you put yourself in this, as you described it, this kind of loop-de-loop, where you're going over and over the same exits and not quite getting to where you want to go. And you related it to your father, and when he was driving the car when you were going to Alexander's, which was set up very much like almost like a clover leaf, where you just kept going in these loops and not quite getting where you wanted to go. And the traffic would move you onto, a road you didn't want to be on, and then you had to spin around again and U-turn and whatever. That whole experience was from your childhood. Okay. And then here you are again at this new beginning, which relates to your childhood, because now what you're doing is you're experiencing how you felt back then, how you felt lost, and how now you are feeling lost again. How do I get out of where I am, where I'm stuck, where I keep looping around, to where I want to go? And as you're going around and you're looking at all these different possible roads you could be on, suddenly there's this bulldozer. Well, what's the bulldozer? It's the end of your job. It's your boss, if you will. It's saying, okay, this is it. The road ends here, and so the road literally cuts off. And what do? You drive to the end, and now you're falling. Why are you falling? Because you weren't expecting this, and now all of a sudden, we're off a cliff here. Where are we going to? And and you know, this is the thing about dreams. Physical laws don't apply. It wasn't a literal road. It was a metaphor road. It wasn't a literal car. It was you're traveling through this life. Where are you heading to? All of a sudden, there's this chasm in front of you that you didn't even know was there, didn't expect it. Boom, now you're falling into it. But where you fall to is this wonderful library, this place where there's all this information. What's that? Well, as you say, it could be related to heaven, but in this case, you're told that God isn't done with you yet. What does that mean? What are all these books then? They're your choices. They're all the different subjects of what you could do from here. So instead of being stuck in whatever kind of work you were doing, the whole world is available to you. So in other words, the reason you don't know the road that you're on is because of what's going on in here, not what's going on out there. It has nothing to do with the loops. It has nothing to do with the pavement. It has nothing to do with where the pavement ends abruptly. It has to do with what do I want to do with my life from here? And what they're saying is, smorgasbord, everything is open to you. Look through the library, pick something that you want to do and go do it. And so what happens? Your father comes in and he says, I didn't know whether to look for you at the hospital or where, right? But number one, he finds you. And number two, you're not at the hospital. Why? Because he's reflecting your feeling of, wait, I fell off a cliff, I should be in the hospital. Mm-hmm. And you really weren't. And so he becomes the confirmation because, again, you went back to your childhood when he was driving the car and you were lost in the loop-de-loop. You related it to this time. And by the way, look at your earrings. You have these hoop earrings on, these big round earrings, you know, and bracelets to match. So you have this kind of, you're wearing this symbol to show going around in circles. Okay, but that same circle is sacred. Okay. That same circle is the circle of those books that are contained and that you have just as much to choose from there. So it's not so much the symbol as how you interpret it. And in this case, what you're being told is that what you saw as something fearful is actually an opening, a new beginning, and all of these worlds are now open to you, and you get to pick which one you want. So you get to basically go to the spiritual library and pick, okay, where to from here, God? You're not done with me yet, that's great, I'm not done either, but I'm just not sure what it is that I want to do. And God says, pick, choose something. It doesn't matter which one you choose, it matters that what you choose you love. That's what matters. So really make whatever your choice is something that's your passion, that you absolutely love to do, and go from there, and you can't fail.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Next, anybody? Oh, we have another person coming in. Hi. Welcome. Wonderful. Yes, join us.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear her? Yeah, just bring it a little closer.
Okay. About a month ago, I had a dream that I was standing on my back porch off my house where I could see the Pequannock River, mm-hmm. and it had flooded. The water had actually come up 4 or 5 feet from the riverbed. And with it to my right, there was a lot of debris. And I was standing on the back porch with my dogs looking at this debris. Mm. And I had seen what I thought was a balloon coming over this debris, and I'm looking up at it and realized that it was my father driving his B-81 Mack that he had many years ago when I was a child, mm-hmm. over this debris, and he came down and he landed on the Hamburg Turnpike. Between Hamburg Turnpike.
Was his car floating?
No, it was like it just made a jump.
A leap?
Yeah, a leap off this debris or over this debris onto the Hamburg Turnpike.
Mm-hmm. From where, though?
From the sky. From
okay.
wherever this debris stopped.
So that's why you thought it was a balloon. When you say balloon, do you mean like a little child's balloon or a hot air balloon?
Hot air balloon.
Hot air balloon, okay.
Yeah.
So it looked like this balloon was coming down and then you realized it was his car.
His truck.
His truck.
It was a Mack truck.
Okay. Oh, a Mack truck. Okay. And then it went over the debris and landed on Hamburg Turnpike. Did it land safely?
Yes, it did actually. And it was blocking, it landed vertically. So it was across 2 lanes, but it was right where the 2 cross streets came out. And as the cars were coming across, I don't know if the truck exploded or he had like a load of dirt in the back that came out, mm-hmm. but it had clouded the way. Mm. So anybody that was oncoming, there was like a couple of fender benders and whatnot.
Because of this big cloud.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I woke up.
Interesting. Did you have a sense that anything had happened to your father?
Well, my father's on the other side.
But in the dream?
No.
Okay. Okay. How long ago did he pass?
2006.
When did you have this dream?
About a month ago.
Okay. What happened about a month ago? in your life? What was going on?
Oh, there's a lot of, there's always something going on with me.
Okay, pick one off the top of your head.
I cracked a tooth.
Ah, okay. What else? Anything else? Were there any major changes, any shifts?
No, nothing major.
Okay.
Just a lot of stuff like.
Was there an anniversary of your dad's passing, or his birthday, or your parents' anniversary?
Yeah, his birthday was the end of February, and this was last month, so it was relatively close. And their
Okay.
anniversary was in March.
In March, okay. So
All
so
right.
you have his birthday in February, his anniversary in March, and here it is April. So it's the end of April. So about a month ago was the borderline between March and April. So your thoughts are already around him, and then you're feeling that, you're sensing his energy, and somehow he wants to get a message to you about what you're experiencing. And so the one thing that you told me that was different was you cracked a tooth. And so where was it, on the top or the bottom?
Top.
Of course it was, because the truck was up. Okay, and when the truck came down, what did it do? It went over the debris. What's the debris? It's the decay in the tooth. And so when it got over the debris, it got to the road, and it was okay hitting the road, but then it crossed a couple lanes, you said? And then all of this cloud, and what is that? Well, basically that's the disruption to the tooth.
Okay,
So where was the tooth, on the right or left side?
it's right here, right side.
On your
Yeah.
right side, okay. And is it okay now? Did you get it taken
Well,
care of?
yeah, it will be as of Monday. It'll be totally fixed.
Right, okay, good, okay. So sometimes dreams are just there to just kind of walk us through what we're experiencing in our bodies. They aren't necessarily to tell us anything other than we're okay, or you're just experiencing this and it's normal. And it is normal to, so people crack teeth every once in a great while. And so in this particular case, you likened it to your dad because of either wanting some level of comfort from him, or wanting to just feel his presence in this, or he was just saying to you from beyond, I'm here, it's okay, you're not alone in this, I've got you. And your ability to move on from this now, I think, is expressed in the fact that you didn't feel that anything happened to him negatively in the dream.
Right.
It really was just a matter of the chaos of, truck, boom. But as you say, it was at first you thought it was a balloon. How many Mack trucks look like a hot air balloon? They're completely different shapes. But if you think about a hot air balloon and a tooth, you could kind of maybe take that shape, and it's a little bit closer. And then again, it's above, and then it's coming down. The river could be likened to the inside of your mouth. And
Yeah.
so, you're expressing through metaphor what you're experiencing physically. A lot of times when you have was it painful when you cracked the tooth?
No.
Okay. But you still had an awareness that it had happened.
Right.
So what happens is our bodies will then put us in a position where we're aware of what's going on, and it's not necessarily like where it's painful, but it's, and it's like tapping you on the shoulder every minute that, like, wait, I'm reminding you I'm here because it's painful. But in your case, you just had this kind of subconscious awareness that something was disrupted.
Correct.
And so the dream was basically showing you that it's going to be okay, that you are going to land safely, and there's going to be this big, cloud and whatever, but all that is just the dust scattering, if you will. It'll settle
True.
over time. Yeah. And so what you've done is you've then gone and you've repaired the tooth.
Correct.
And then everything, that's the dust settling.
Okay.
Okay?
All right.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was at the webinar today.
Yes. Did you enjoy it?
I did. And it brought up something that I thought about, and I wanted to ask about hallucinations,
Okay.
sleep, or sleep that is induced by, like, drugs, medications, let's just say.
Medications,
Okay.
yes.
Is there a difference? And I have a question I want to ask you about it. Because is there a difference in it? Or do you feel like
Between hallucinations and dreams?
Between dreams or dreams that are maybe induced by medications?
Oh, okay, because hallucinations is a whole other category.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're dreaming, you're asleep. You can have
Right.
visions, you can have things that happen when you're awake. A hallucination is actually a distortion of reality, but when you're dreaming, you're asleep. So clarify a little bit for
Okay.
me what it is that you're asking about.
So like 3.5 years ago, I was very sick. I was in the hospital. I was in the ICU.
Yes.
I was on pretty heavy duty medications.
Yeah, yeah. What kind? Were they pain relievers?
Pain, all kind,
Mhm. Were they
everything.
opiates?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the thing is, thought I was hallucinating, but I realized now it was probably a dream that I was having because in my dream, I was in the hospital, in the bed that I was in, but things were different. Like, for instance, behind my bed, which there was no behind my bed, it was just a wall.
Right.
So it was the ICU. It was a very small room. But behind my bed,
In the dream.
in my dream, which I didn't realize, I would see, like, this is going to sound really strange. You know Bambi?
Yeah.
I used to see Thumper and Flower. No, this is so weird. The bunny and the skunk would be running behind my bed
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then when I looked up, like at the wall, there was like a gargoyle, like those creepy gargoyles that you see, you know, in, I don't know, where do you see them? On horror movies.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
And it was black and dark and everything
Was
like
it
that.
alive or was it just like a statue?
It was a statue, but it was looking at me.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I would look behind me, and there would be Thumper and you know, Flower running around behind me. No, I know it sounds so stupid.
No,
but,
it doesn't sound stupid at all.
But I
It's
just
just-
never knew what that meant. And
Yeah.
I used to think I was hallucinating, but I wasn't hallucinating because the room was not at all like, you know, like there was like windows behind me and a whole bunch of room behind me and stuff where they were running around. And
And
it was-
in
it
real
was not
life,
in
there
my
was just a
hospital
wall.
room, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So you're facing out. So your head's on the pillow and you're looking ahead of you. What's in front of you in the actual hospital room?
Like it was the door and like windows.
Did you have a TV?
Yeah.
Okay. Where was the gargoyle in front of you? Was it to your right or to your left?
to my left.
Up to your left. Where was the TV?
God.
That's something I would never forget.
I don't. The TV. It was probably, I don't know.
Put yourself in the hospital room for a second. Just lay back and just think of when you
It
were.
was to the left, but
Exactly. Was it up?
no, it wasn't. It was like one
So
of those.
it wasn't one of those things where they hung it on the wall. It was like it was on a stand or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Because the first thing that occurred to me because I was sensing that you were seeing it up to the left side, and you know, a lot of times when you're in a hospital bed, that's what they do is they put the TV up and then you're actually watching, and it's usually on the left side from the bed. So you're seeing the gargoyle may have been, number one, your impression of something that was on the TV. Say you fell asleep with the TV on and there was a horror movie on and you just didn't even know it. Or maybe the TV was off but you had seen something earlier that day that triggered this. It could have been a lot of different things. Did you feel threatened by the gargoyle?
I mean, I didn't like looking at him,
Right.
but I was really out of it.
Did he do
like,
anything like
super.
looking at you?
Yeah,
I mean,
he had, like-
other than looking at you?
No, he just had.
Did he
really-
move?
He had evil eyes.
Did they move? Did they blink?
They were shiny.
But was he just stone and
was
just
just-
looking at you, or was he actually
He was like
somehow
animated, fluid, but
fluid,
not,
okay.
he wasn't like moving
right?
around.
But from where he was, like he was.
Oh, he was perched
Yeah.
and staring at me with
and
like
staring
shiny
at you.
eyes.
Yeah. You know, the interesting thing though is that right behind you, think about that. That's right at your head.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what it's saying is, despite the fact that this is whatever this is looming, what's going on back here or up here, if you will, is Thumper and Flower.
Yeah.
Everything's like happy back here. In other words, while you're experiencing this vision, whether it's a dream or a hallucination or whatever it was, it first off, yes, the answer to your first question, what, you know, can drugs affect this sort of thing? Yes, they can. I mean, eat pizza before you go to bed and you can affect your dreams. Because if you think about it, the second that you eat that pizza, all of your blood is going to your stomach and digesting. Well, what is it that controls the firing of the neurons in your brain but the flow of your blood? So you've now changed that because you're digesting something. Okay. So whether or not the specific chemistry of the pizza is affecting anything, I don't know. But I can tell you that you've now moved the very thing that flows the information, and now you've put it down, you know, into your stomach. So if you're taking a medication, you're just messing with your neurotransmitters. You may as well be juggling with them. So you're literally taking the things that are happening in your brain and you're shutting some off and you're turning some on, and you're doing things to get you through the pain that you're experiencing from the reason that you're in the hospital to begin with. And that is definitely going to have an effect on your dreams, because you've literally changed your brain chemistry. And dream at its base is thought. You're in a different state of consciousness, but it's still thought underlying whatever your conscious thought is. So what you're experiencing, again, whether you were awake and hallucinating or if you were dreaming this, was that you're okay, that your mind was saying, no, we're good, but at the same time, what is this over here? Why is this looking at me? Why am I being, you know, scrutinized in this way? And that could have been because while you were in that state, you know, the nurses or the doctors coming in and out are all looking at you, and you're in a hospital gown with the back open, and you're laying down. You're like, yeah, I know I'm laying down, but I'm still vulnerable. Why are you people all coming in to see me? There's that sense of like, on one hand, you know that they're caregivers. On the other hand, they're total strangers. Who are these people? Why are they looking at me? Why are they examining me? Which is what the gargoyle was doing. It was examining you. And so you were having this feeling that what was coming out from the outside, and again, it's to your left. The reason it's to your left is because we intuit through the left part of the body and we create through the right. The majority of people are right-handed, and you know, even the people that are left-handed, this is just a general flow of energy, is that it comes in, intuition comes in through the left and it moves out through the right. And so you were receiving a message that was making you uncomfortable. That discomfort could have come from anything from something that you were experiencing physically inside to the people that were coming in and out of your room.
Interesting.
Yeah. And because of what you were taking, the painkillers you were taking, they had enough of an effect on your physiology that what you were imagining was what was coming and looking at you was really looking at you hard, which is what doctors and nurses do. They're very specific in what they're looking for, and you feel like you're under a microscope. So that's kind of how you felt. And again, the TV being off to the left too, the TV is just a big eye. And it's looking towards you. So that's another reason I thought that maybe those two things were connected.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Say again?
That's it. I just wanted to say, try Indian food.
Try Indian food.
I got used to it, and then I woke up, I realized, hey, man, that's a drug. Those are spices.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Good. See, I knew you'd get there.
Yeah, I know.
No, not me.
Okay. My grandmother Catherine died when I was 15. My mother Eunice died when I was 37.
Mm-hmm.
And about 4 months after my mother died, when she died,
I'm sorry, give me the ages again.
when I was 15, my grandmother died.
And she was?
Catherine.
No, her age.
86.
Oh, okay. She was up there. Okay.
And I was 37 when my mother died.
Okay. And
So that's 22 years.
And
span.
how old was she when she passed?
74.
Okay.
And it devastated me when my mother died. I just, the world stopped. And
How long ago was this?
1997,
Mm-hmm.
it was June.
So 20 years ago.
Yes. So,
Oh, almost to the month.
yeah.
Okay.
Like when summer was just hot, and I just thought it was going to be hot for the rest of eternity. And
Yeah.
when autumn started and it started to be a little cool or a little breezy, I'm like, what is this? Oh, yeah.
Right. Life
It's
goes
autumn.
on. Yeah.
Life is going on. In October of that year, I had a dream where I was standing on this hugely long line, kind of like Ellis Island.
Mm-hmm.
And I was holding paperwork in my hands, my license, my passport, and some other almost immigration type paperwork to prove my identity. And the line was huge and very slow. And
where were you in it? Were you all the way toward the end?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I had to wait and wait and wait. And it seemed like every single person, when they got waited on, took forever. It's like when you're at the DMV
Yeah.
and someone in front of you is from Kansas and doesn't know anything about it. And no offense to
Yes.
Kansas, but, And so it inched forward so slowly.
Yeah.
And as I got closer and closer and closer, I recognized the woman standing behind the table who was processing everyone. And it was my grandmother. And I'm like, ooh.
Yeah. Yeah. At least there's a familiar face.
Yeah.
there.
So we're inching and we're inching and we're inching and we're inching. And of course, as I get closer to her, because all I want to do is hug her and kiss her,
Right.
as I'm getting closer, the line is slowing down proportionately. So it's an eternity, absolute eternity. And finally, when it's my turn, she turns to me and she says, "Hello, Lorraine, I love you." And I dropped all my paperwork, busted out crying. And she said, "I've missed Eunice," her daughter, my mother, so much. And I'm so grateful that she's here with me. And then it just hugs and crying and like a dissolve in a good movie.
So you got to
Yeah.
hug her in the dream.
Yes.
Yes.
My grandmother.
Yes.
And then I woke up and I knew my mother was okay.
Okay.
And I got a little better. Now, I heard you asking other people other questions. My
Yes.
grandmother's birthday's in October.
Uh-huh.
So I'm thinking that's maybe why it happened in October.
You had the dream in October
Yes.
because around her birthday.
Yep.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I always thought it was kind of cut and dried. It was kind of like, well, I wanted to know if my mother's okay, and my grandmother told me that she's okay,
Yeah.
so she's okay.
Well, I mean, it is that cut and dry, but it's also more than that. In other words, the rest of that experience of being on the line thinking you're at Ellis Island, well, what's that about? Did your grandmother come in on Ellis Island? Or did somebody in
No.
your lineage, did they come
I'm
over
sure they
here?
did, you know,
Further back?
several generations
Okay,
before.
but you know the story, and you know how when people would get there, I mean, some of them, their names got changed. Some of them, their identities were, they were sent back to where they were going. They had a child with them, and the child had the flu, so they couldn't bring them in. They had to wait, quarantine, all of the different issues with Ellis Island. The reason you were seeing Ellis Island in this case is because, first off, you were feeling completely detached from your mother. And that you were seeking to become reattached with her in some way. You were feeling that at this point you were in hell, because literally in summer everything was hot and you felt that it would never get cool again. It would never cool down from what it was. You were basically in hell. And so that feeling extended for a few months. And then as that got better, as the air began to cool, you started to get a glimmer of hope. But the hope itself was still a long time coming. Well, the long time coming is the long line. It's you imagining that you're separate from the people who created you. Okay. The fact of the matter is that your DNA, your bloodline, lives in you all the time. There is never a moment where you're separate from your mother or your grandmother. They live on through you. Literally, physically, they live on through you. Spiritually, of course. Mentally, absolutely. Emotionally, you feel about them all the time. So you are always connected with them. But we have this perception that when the physical body dies, that we're separate. But quantum physics teaches us that everything at its base is energy. So this podium might be solid in what I perceive as reality, but my reality and yours are completely different. We've agreed to this physical state, but the fact is you put this under a powerful enough microscope and all you see is empty space. So everything connects to everything else through that exact process, through the fact that it's all energy. So you're no different than me. You're no different from your grandmother or your mother. You're all the same stuff. And because you're related, you're even more connected because now you came through the same lineage. Okay, so they literally live on through you. But at the moment when someone passes, especially a parent, you don't feel like, oh, well, that makes perfect sense. I get it. You're still here. I'm good. No, you feel the devastation. You feel the disconnection. You want to be able to hug them again. You want to be able to hold them again. You want them to say it's going to be okay, and their voice has been silenced in the physical plane. But their energy hasn't. Their spirit hasn't. And so it takes time for us to begin to open up to the people who have passed because they're still here. Nothing has changed as far as they go other than the physical body. So once you get over the perception that the physical body is gone, so what did you do? You went from summer, which everybody else was experiencing as time to go to the beach, and this is life, and it's happy, and we're going about and doing what we want to do because we're on vacation, kids are out of school, all of that, and you're seeing it from exactly the opposite perspective. And then for you, when it gets better, is as the weather begins to cool, meaning, okay, I get it. Like this is settling in. I got a little glimmer of hope here. This is actually going to get better. And what do? You end up still on this long line in this dream thinking there's this huge distance between me and them. You don't even know that it's your grandmother at the table because the line is so long you can't see her. And then you get to her and you realize as you're a few people away, oh my God, it's her. And then what does she do? The first thing she says is, and repeat it please.
Lorraine, I love you.
Yeah.
And I forgot, she told me to drop the papers. I didn't need the papers that I was holding in my
Exactly
hand.
right, because your papers for you were your identity, which in this case meant your mourning. Your feeling that you had to mourn this in the way that society teaches us to mourn, that I have to still be connected to my mother, and here's my proof. I'm still attached to her. I still have the papers. I still have her license and her social security card and her death certificate. It's all here. Her birth certificate. I have it all. Let me show you. You don't need that. Her physical self is gone. You don't need to attach to any of that. All you need to attach to is her. And here's your grandmother appearing as a gift to you to say, here I am. She's okay. I'm so glad she's with me now because I missed her too. And so that gives you a moment of comfort, of solace, because you can see that there's more to this than just me connecting with my physical mom anymore. That we've gone beyond that. I can call her anytime I want to. And you can invite her into a dream anytime you want to. She's there all the time. The question is, have you had the experience of dreaming with her? And if not, is that something that you want? And if it is, then choose it. And the way to do that is through affirmation. Invite her in. Actually get a note card invitation, write it out to her, and put it under your pillow. Begin to do rituals that give you a physical memory so that you literally saturate your physiology instead of the thought of, oh, I miss you and I mourn for the fact that you're no longer here. Now it's like, I miss you, but I'd love to have a cup of tea with you. And we can do that anytime in my dreams, so come on in. And then see what happens.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Did you have something you want to share?
Hi, Jefferson.
Hi.
Mine's about, I think you kind of touched on it a moment ago, about lucid dreaming.
Yes.
And my dad died this coming up week, 2 years ago.
Okay.
And he was extremely disabled from a very young age. It's like he pretty much from a stroke. And we all took care of him until he was 92 years old and stuff. So, but what happened was half his brain really was not functioning. So his verbal skills were fine, but it was anger all the time. So he became to the family, even at a young age, extremely verbally abusive. So there's two things I'd like to do is I'd like to forgive him.
Yes.
Because when he passed, I felt safe, which sounds terrible.
No, but I get
But
it,
I didn't
yeah.
feel that, and we all
Yeah.
did what we could for Dad, and we all loved him. So I just am trying to come to that point, and I think this might aid me a little bit in doing that.
Absolutely.
Because it's happened with other people, but I can't seem to do it with my dad. And he did the best that he could.
Yes.
Did the best that he could.
And understand that he was dealing with a challenge that most people don't ever experience, where one part of your brain is literally shut down and doesn't function. And so what you were hearing in his anger was frustration.
Oh, yeah.
His inability to be able to function at a higher level the way that the people around him were functioning. So some of that frustration was, I'm trying to communicate this to you and you're not understanding, but not because there's anything wrong with you, it's because my brain isn't functioning in a way that I can communicate it to you effectively. And so the only thing that I do have, and this is true of a lot of people who have brain injuries, that, I'm going with the parts of my brain that are working, and then I can do that. In this case, it was speech. And so his anger would come out as being verbally abusive. It wasn't personally directed at anybody. It was his frustration over his physical experience. And it comes out the way that we perceive that, because number one, we always want to be doing better for the people that we care about. We always want to be doing something that's going to help them, especially when they're physically challenged like that. As you say, your family took care of him and they did everything that they could to make him comfortable. But no matter what you did in this life, mentally he couldn't feel comfortable because there was always that missing piece. The good news is he's now spirit, he's now energy. The physical body, which was damaged, let's say he had a virus in his software, if you will, the way that his computer functioned up here didn't function the same way as other people's. Either the software was outdated, or in this case it was corrupted by the stroke. And so he was unable in this lifetime to reconcile that in a way that was effective, because of the fact that he was missing that part that would have enabled him to have that level of compassion. And not even so much to have the compassion, but to translate it, to be able to actually speak it to the people who were caring for him. My guess is that he had a lot more gratitude than anybody knew, and his frustration was so profound that he just couldn't express it because that part of his brain was dysfunctional. And so now that he's gone, you can invite him back in, because the person that he was before that stroke wasn't the person that you grew up with. That was the person who was more of the blank slate, who did love, who did have his children and did care for them, and who wanted to be able to provide for them in a more meaningful way, and then felt that he couldn't and expressed instead the frustration of not being able to do that. That frustration part is gone. And so the part of him that exists now is in pure joy. It's in the light. And so you have the ability to connect with him again in his state of being in between this life and wherever he's heading, if that's reincarnation or heaven or whatever you believe. You have the opportunity to connect with him now in this state. So what I tell people is, he lives in you, as I said to Lorraine. So you have the ability at any time to change your experience with this. If you think about it, people who have passed on, if they don't come to us, part of the reason is because we tell them no.
It's
Which in
very
your
true.
case, I think
And I've
is
had other
appropriate.
people that have come and it's really resolved things.
Yeah, exactly.
For me. But
so
they
you-
just showed up.
you-
I didn't invite them.
Exactly,
so-
but you did have the experience at least that they showed up and you were able to resolve issues.
Absolutely.
So you're open to doing that kind of thing except with this one person because of how he was in physical life. But understand that that physical life is no more. The physical body, which was dysfunctional, is no more. And therefore, the soul that he was is who you can now connect with. And then that gives you permission to go, okay, you know what? It's my dream state. I get to craft what I want it to be. So grab a pen and paper, and first off, write down, here's what I would do. Write down on a legal pad, take a line down the middle, and you know how to do a pro and con list. And you see which one is more prevalent because it's whichever the pro or con is longer. In this case, I want you to write down, and this is going to be a little difficult, but it'll be very therapeutic for you. Write down all of the negative thoughts or experiences that you ever had with your dad in one column. And if it takes more than one page, that's fine. Okay, then what I want you to do is I want you to take the other column. First off, write down the positive experiences, but also when you see a negative that you've written down, in the column opposite, write the positive opposite of it. So if it was, my dad was always angry, trust me, just next to that, write, my dad was always happy. Put whatever you wanted his experience to be, because that's where he is now.
Oh.
Okay, so in other words,
really
see, that's the thing. It's not that he's changing at this point. He's already changed. He's already left this lifetime. You're the one that's still stuck.
Okay.
So what we're doing is we're healing the stuck part of you now. He was stuck, and he got out of the stuck place by passing on. You're stuck in this place because you're still hamster wheeling, if you will,
true.
on the thoughts that you had while he was alive. But if you see him in a new lens, if you get to put on your, okay, these are my glasses that say everything is good now. He's in heaven. He's able to just be himself now, and without the dysfunctional body or brain, I can connect with him anytime. So first I'm going to write down all the positive opposites. Then I'm going to cut the paper in half, and I'm going to take the part with all the negatives and burn it. You know, grab a terracotta pot, or if you have a fireplace, set it on fire, literally turn it into ash. Take the carbon from that and bury it in a garden. And then let the carbon be reprocessed into something that grows the following year. So you said it's been 2 years since he passed, it's now spring. So you take that ash and you put it into a garden and you grow, you put some seeds on top of it, and the next spring he's now, those negative thoughts have now been basically pulverized, they've been destroyed into something that creates the very thing that helps that flower to grow. Or put them into a stream and just let it just go downstream and
I have an idea of
be
place.
reprocessed into nature. You know, the same way when someone passes and they've been cremated, that you throw the ashes, you know, wherever they wanted them, into the ocean or you know, whatever their wish was. The idea is that their ash is then reprocessed into nature. So I'm saying do the same thing with your angry thoughts, because your angry thoughts now are the only ones that are left. His are already gone. So if you take your negative thoughts and you burn them, they are no longer. And then what do you have left? You have all the positive experience. So I'm saying re-script your relationship with your father to the one that you can have now that he's become pure soul, pure energy, pure light. And then as you do that, you will find that what you couldn't let go becomes perfectly easy to let go. Because you understand that this was a physically challenged human being who couldn't help but be who he was because he didn't have the capacity to be anybody else. And then once you realize that the new person, the new dad that you have now, is just the opposite. He is happy, he is enjoying, he's willing to share that with you. Then what I would do, again, another ritual. Rituals are important because it's creating a physical memory so that you can be able to change how you're feeling inside. So in other words, when you go on vacation and all of a sudden you get back to work and it's like on one hand it's like, oh, I'm back at work, but on the other hand you're like, oh, that was so great being in Hawaii. And you've relaxed and you've de-stressed and you've been able to, you know, just have time to not think about the things that stress you out. Same kind of thing. Rituals are there so that we have a physical memory of when we were on vacation, when we were at a better time, when we forgave something, when we did something that had meaning and purpose in our life. And so what I would do is I would then invite him in. Do what I said, you know, with Lorraine. Write out an invitation to him, but be specific as to what your dream experience will be, because again, it's your thought. It's happening in your head. You get to invite him in, like the vampire who's passed. They don't come until you invite them. So now you're saying, okay, I wasn't sure about you, but you know what? No, you're good. You're my dad. I know that you love me. So here's the conditions. I am safe in my dreams, I know that you love me. We will only have positive conversations. Come sit, have tea with me. I may have questions for you, and let's talk about that. If you have any for me, let's talk about that. Tell me what happened to you from your experience, but from where you are now. Because he's up now looking down at this and saying, okay, I get it. I was challenged, but there was a purpose for that. I was whatever, undoing bad karma, or just learning a life lesson that my generation hadn't learned, and someone needed to take on the negativity, because if one person didn't take on some portion of it, it would have been a larger dose of negativity that could have harmed the planet in a different way. There's a lot of ways that nature balances negativity, and one of them is that if you have an imbalance, if somebody takes on some of the negativity and processes it, it keeps something else even more negative from happening. And he may have very well, on a soul level, contracted to do that before he was ever born to this life. In which case, what he was doing was actually altruistic. And so it gives you an opportunity to see him through a new lens and to be able to heal your relationship with him in a way that gives you the power to be able to let go of the negative thoughts, let go of the human being who he was, and love the spirit who he was.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? No? Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for coming out. I really appreciate you being here. If you want to see the webinar that we recorded today, it's online. It's on YouTube, on William Paterson's webinar page. And I'm happy to say that we've already booked another one, which as a follow-up, which we'll be doing a Q&A, basically. There were so many questions that came up at the webinar today, so we're thinking the next one's just going to be a Q&A. And we'll refer people to the original webinar. They can watch that beforehand and get a sense of what the topic is if they weren't present for the first one, and then be able to ask questions later on. So this will be an ongoing... Say again?
You should teach a class here at the university, like a...
I should teach a class at the university? Feel free to write a letter to the president and tell them exactly that. I'd be most happy to. Yeah, I'd be most happy to. Yeah, continuing education, absolutely. I'd be most happy to. So, yeah, I'm all for that. And thank you so much for coming. And this will be an ongoing conversation here. So please join us next time. And thank you again. And Lynn and Sharon, thank you so much for having me here. And William Paterson, I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, Jefferson.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you very much.